Okay, cool. So I normally I always feel like I try and start these podcasts in like a different place.
Yeah.
I never do. I'm always like, so how did you get here? So you said a minute ago, just before we started recording, that you're an introvert.
Yeah.
So take me all the way back to pre-Gymshark, pre what you're doing now.
Yeah.
How did you get into all of this? How did Elf start his career?
Well, it's a great place to start. Well, I was born in the Congo, so my family and I moved to the UK when I was 14. Fresh canvas, blank canvas, didn't know anybody. Obviously, in search of a better life, which is all great. All my life, I thought I was going to be a doctor because my dad's a doctor, and my dad's my hero, and my mom too. But my dad was always the person that I wanted to impress. And then I realized that I was shit at science, right? So I had to find something else. And when I moved to the UK, the land of opportunity in my eyes that I saw, I said, okay, cool. So what am I good at? I like coming up with ideas, but can you actually have a career doing that? And then an iPhone keynote in 2007 changed my life forever because I knew about marketing, but nobody had really done it in a way that I really understood and I resonated with. It was all like corporate bullshit, suits, madmen, the malarkey. And then when Steve Jobs stepped up with the black turtleneck, proper dad shoes, but he was rocking it.
New Balance and the
New
jeans.
Balances, the jeans, the lot, and the line. Instead of saying 1,000, like a gigabyte of music, him saying 1,000 songs in your pocket, that just resonated with me. It was all about storytelling at a very high level in a way that gets people captivated about products and services, which I really loved. So that got me hooked on marketing. After that, I hear about this 23-year-old saying no to Yahoo after they offered him $1 billion. Mark Zuckerberg, he's the one that owned the platform that me and my friends are using called Facebook. I was like, marketing for peace, the place that we're always at is online on socials. Maybe that could be a future place where people can market. So I came up with this theory that in the future there's going to be a thing called social media marketing, and everybody thought I was crazy to the point where just to show people how crazy I was, it was the topic of my dissertation, how small to medium-sized businesses can leverage social to dethrone the larger competitors, and it was marked down for lack of Harvard references. Yeah, because nobody had done it before. So I said, all right, cool, I'm going to become the reference. And that's started my crazy trail to become that reference. And we're just getting closer to that every single day. So that's the journey. That's the spark.
I love that. I love that you've referenced Steve Jobs because I always go back to Steve Jobs in reference to personal branding. Like he's one of the OGs of personal branding. Same with Bill Gates, regardless of what you think of him. They're like the OGs of you believe in us, so you buy what we're selling.
They made being a CEO cool,
sexy,
right? And something a little bit different, which is why you always have to credit them for it.
It's interesting that you reference that because I wouldn't say I had such a poignant moment at that, but I definitely, when I was growing up, didn't feel like the same as everyone else.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I need to do something. And it's interesting that you said about your dissertation because my dissertation was on the influence of people on marketing and like how you could use people basically. And it's not surprising that that's what I've ended up doing for a career. And it wasn't intentional, right? I didn't write this dissertation, but like, I'm going to do personal branding because back then there wasn't even a fucking thing. Like social media wasn't even a thing really. Like I think Instagram had just started, Twitter had been going for a few years. Social media wasn't really a thing, but my whole thing was like people influence buying decisions more than brands do. So whatever, similar. I didn't get a particularly great grade because like people were like, what the hell are you talking about? And here we are 10 years later or 12 years later talking about it on a podcast.
But the thing is though about education, I think that they're still teaching the same stuff at university now. And you realize you actually learn, weirdly enough, we're in a profession where you learn more outside of the studying.
100%.
It actually puts you in handcuffs.
100%.
Right?
It's funny that you say that because I remember at the time that I did my degree, so I did internships in between every summer break. Just, I was fortunate enough to be working full time in a nightclub, so I could afford to do that, right? Yeah. So I did internships in all these PR departments and all these amazing brands. And I always would come back after Samba, be like, I know all this stuff. I've learned all this stuff. Like, I've just been on a shoot with Cheryl Cole and done all this, amazing stuff. And then they'd be like, this year we're learning how to write press releases. And I'm like, I've literally been doing that for Marks and Spencer for the last 12 weeks. Like the biggest brand I could have been doing it for as part of my internship.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking there was such a disconnection between what I was practicing as an account exec or as a junior PR exec versus what I was learning and potentially gearing up for that kind of role.
Yeah.
In situ, or rather in university. And I thought maybe that we'd moved on a little bit from that until I spoke to my marketing executive, or who's now about to be a marketing manager. And when I hired her as my intern, I said, also, what are you doing as part of your degree? And she goes, yeah, we've done one module on digital marketing. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, we've done one module. I was like, sorry, if your 3 or 4 year degree, because she did 1 year in industry, 4 year degree, you did one module, not 1 year, one module on digital marketing as a marketing degree.
In the 2020s.
But like, what other kind of marketing is there right now? Everything, even traditional marketing is digital marketing. Like display is digital.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Right now, the winning strategy for display and traditional marketing is to do shit that's going to go viral online.
Exactly.
It's actually the epicenter is digital.
Yeah.
So even if we always used to talk about using IRL to disrupt URL, and that's the tactic right now. And I just felt that whilst, to be honest, and we'll probably touch on it later, I feel like the theory of marketing at university is helping me out now in my career. It didn't do anything for me at the start. At the start, you just have to like fail, try. You'll have this theory that this is going to work. It's not going to work out. What you think is going to not work out actually works out. Just figuring it out. And then when you get to a position where you're like building a business, building teams, and you need to lean on like trial and tested theories as a starting point, that's when you go back into the archives and you're like, oh, this is useful, but it is completely useful. Like, it's like, if I didn't, what they call it, start a business or get to a position where I had to hire like a global or have a whole global team underneath me, it gave me no use, really. Especially as marketing changes every day.
It's interesting that you said that. I think that whole thing of you leave university with loads of information but no real skills.
Yeah.
I think that's true of most degrees.
Yeah.
And sure, there's an argument for degrees that it's not about what you learn there. It's about the time that you get to spend and blah, blah, blah. Like, I understand all that. I personally did not have that experience at university. I fucking hated university. Just like I hated school. I was so desperate to just get out of education. But it's interesting you say that because I feel like everything career-wise is that, whether you're in marketing or you're in something else, when you leave university, you know nothing. And you almost have to do the tactical stuff of like, let me try this, see if that works. Let me try that, see if that. Even with your jobs. Yeah. Like, the first job you ever have, awful. Yeah. Like, the worst.
Pretty much getting paid like nothing.
To do the worst job ever.
Just work and vibes. That's all it is. And the thing is, going back to, weirdly enough, because I did the whole university experience, I actually really liked uni. Like, in general, it was great for my...
Where did you go?
So I went to Wolverhampton.
Okay.
So I didn't go anywhere crazy. I wanted to stay near home as we just moved to the country. This is actually the first time that I moved in a different city, town than my mom. Yeah. We've always been together. And now when I moved out to London, that's the first time, because all my siblings went away for uni. Yeah. I was always there. So even with Gymshark, it was in Birmingham, so I was always local. But for the most part, what I got from uni was confidence, because one, I did well, so that helped me because it proved that I wasn't crazy. Two, I think the social aspect that I got from it was actually so much more helpful. I actually have a theory, especially with everything that's happening with like modern day technology and ChatGPT and everything like that, that IQ being the main selling point and intellect being the main selling point for a university is going to become redundant. EQ is going to be the big factor. Any university that can pivot, or educational system that can pivot to get people to be better communicators, actually improve those skills you put in your CVs that you don't actually do, interpersonal skills, communication skills, listening skills, being entrepreneurial and taking risks. Anyone that can nail that, that's going to be the next Harvard, Cambridge of the future.
That's a really interesting point, actually, especially I'm glad you brought ChatGPT up, because there is. I was listening to. I don't know if you listened to the Joe Rogan Experience, but the one with Lex Friedman. I'm upset. Like I'm like a nerd. Every time it comes out, I'm like, I've just been 3 hours listening to this. But the stuff they talk about is fascinating. And that particular episode, he was saying, this platform is potentially going to replace Google, but if it does, like that's quite dangerous because one, what information gets fed into it can be censored, and actually they've shown that it is already censoring information to a degree. But the other thing is, if people are solely relying on a platform for their intelligence, then knowledge and storytelling and history just goes poof and disappears. And that ultimately, like us being smart is great, but unless you're applying that intelligence somewhere, then it means nothing.
Yeah.
What do you think the future of that is, like in context of marketing potentially, because a lot of copywriters and stuff are using it for copy, like I know a lot of I think it was one of the big publishers have just got rid of loads of their copywriters and replaced it basically with the platform. Just wild to me.
The issue is, right, I think that short term it's going to make a lot of companies more efficient, right? So
it's access to information, right? That's a skill in itself. Like I always joke to these guys, like I hire them loosely off their Google ability to Google stuff. Because unless you can ask it the right questions, you don't get the right answers.
And I think that everybody always sees everything as an or conversation. I always see it as an and conversation, right? So at the end of the day, and here's one of the reasons, or the true challenge that I have with university and the system, especially from a marketing context. Now, if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer and stuff like that, if you want to be a pilot, study, get the degree. If the pilot announced that they got 80% on the flight test and the 20% is the landing bit, I'm not comfortable, right? But when it comes,
a surgeon turns up in flip flops, like, right?
By the way, I don't know how to sew you back up. But when it comes to the creative and marketing space, the companies that are different, going back to the whole think different analogy, ironically, that made people think the same, but I digress. Because it's all about who can, going back to marketing 101, whoever who can service or exceed the expectation of your customers better than your competitors. It's all about thinking differently and being different. And those institutions teach you how to think the same, right? So the issue with the technology is people that are very open-minded and very inviting of the technology will say, actually, how can we use this to accelerate what we're doing? How can we do what we're doing even better? As opposed to, well, this does the same thing. Just teach people new skills, work around it, do more with the technology. I just feel like it's a powerful thing. It makes me super more productive. I'm convinced that I have dyslexia because it takes me forever to like write up stuff, right? But for the most part, that gives me a great starting point. I still have to add the Elfried personality to it. And the issue with marketeers is because we all copy each other, when everybody does it, you're going to find for the new thing to make you different, right? So in the past, just being on social media was a differentiating factor. Now that everybody's on there, you have to do something else. So you always have to think, okay, cool. If everybody's going to be able to do this, then great copywriting and having a strong copy team is no longer a differentiating factor. What else is? Now can I use that to leverage that?
And make your copywriters better.
Exactly.
Because they're not spending all this time doing the research and like making sure it's fat.
Yeah.
It's really interesting technology. It's funny because I think even only a year ago, it was quite basic. Like you would not be amazed by what it does. And I think what they did was they introduced humans to it. And so the tech would produce like say 5 answers to your question, and then a human would go, that's the best answer. And that's how it learned to produce like better copy.
It's only going to be, as soon as the thing is, so I'm by no means an expert. I'm very, very simple in the way that I see things. But I like watching, I think I put a LinkedIn post about how Cartoon Network made me a better marketeer, right?
Yeah.
So I love like I like the Avengers. I like anything that helps me like storytell even better.
Yeah.
And obviously Iron Man has Jarvis, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the stepstone to that, right? And as basic as it is right now, you know the trajectory that it's going to go into. And the first thing I said is buckle up, right? Everybody needs to think about how do we actually leverage this thing? Because it happens all the time. Social media happened, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's a threat."
The internet. Everyone was like, oh, a podcast. I think it was Howard Stern was like, oh, one of the biggest broadcasters in America was like, oh, podcast. Why would anyone listen to a podcast? Now there's like 1 billion podcasts in the world, right?
Yeah. But also, I think that everybody defaults to, oh, people are going to lose their jobs. But if we get to a position, I'm just saying, if we get to a position where people don't have to work to keep society running, and you can start doing what you're passionate about because the robots are doing the other bits, it's a good place to be.
Well, it's a good place for businesses to be as well, because it means you're only paying top, intelligent, high-level, highly skilled people.
Yeah, and then you start to focus on what are you top at, right? And then I just feel, I don't think it's going to eradicate everything completely, but I just feel like it's just a great time for humans. Like, I just feel like it gives anybody an upper hand. Like, you can be in Congo, right? And have ChatGPT and have an opportunity. I'm a glass half full person.
No, so I am too. I got called toxically positive all the time. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense to me.
I have to be around people that are completely opposite to kind of like rein me in. But for the most part, I just see the opportunity with it.
Yeah. Well, it's the world we live in right now. It's interesting that you brought that up, because I don't want to spend too much time talking about that, because that's not why I'm here. But I think like the introduction of even like crypto and like DeFi stuff has really flattened the world, so that people in the Congo have opportunities to stuff that people in London might have, or even, you know, in South America, like you can now work from anywhere, and as long as you're intelligent and you're skilled, you can have internet connection. Obviously, you can access pretty much anything. Like, I learned how to build my first business on YouTube. I didn't learn that by doing or by being a part of a business or even in a degree. I learned that on YouTube. So if you have a Wi-Fi connection, you can pretty much learn anything.
Going back to what you're saying just there, is the business degree taught you what to do when the business is already set up and you have a team already. Now, for me to go to company's house and all that stuff, well, that's missing. Like, the actual start of it is what's always missing, right? So
it's like school. How do you start a career? They don't teach you how to do a CV.
How do you save money? How do you invest money?
Why it's good to have a credit card? What a mortgage even means?
Yeah. There's a lot of things that are just like missing, but yeah, I just feel, going back to the conversation around all you need is an internet connection. I think that people are widely mistaking the true impact of COVID. We think that ended. I think that was just the beginning, right? The mindset shift, and I think everyone's watched Inception, the movie, right? And how they're going deep down into somebody's mind to just change a mindset or a message that somebody says to themselves, and how powerful that can be, right? Now, what COVID did, it made us almost like understand that ambiguity is okay, because everybody was caught up in jobs and careers because we were sold this whole like perception that it's safe, right? And also that we can't be productive working from home. Now, COVID, from a work perspective, was a massive experience to say, you know what? Everybody go home. Everybody start working remotely. And by the way, your job's not safe. People that graduated from university walked into a shit show because they didn't have jobs for them. And now the companies that were hiring a lot during COVID are now letting people go. So this last 3 years, I don't think people have learned not to trust security, and that actually doing your own thing is equally as risky as having a job. The only option is that one is in the hands of somebody else, right? The other is down to whether you feel like you're good enough to go the long course, right? Are you going to bet on yourself or bet on somebody else? And that's what I think the big message was, for me at least.
I agree with that. And I think that's actually like something that I've always said is no job is permanent. And actually, you should align because it's very easy for me to say, start a business, right? Because like we're sitting here, like sitting in that seat and, you know, proof of concept and all that. I don't think everyone should start a business. I think a small percentage of people should start a business. Not because we're better than everyone, because it is so fucking hard.
It's honestly like you can make way more money, be way more successful.
Being employed, 100%.
Being the 12th person, 14th person, 15th person at a major organization, you still get to be challenged, and you don't take home the pressure, right?
Of paying the bills.
I feel like because I had the options to do that, right? But the only reason why I decided to go the business route was because I was led by cause, right?
Yeah.
So that's the only reason why I wanted to do it. But for the most part, I feel like the hybrid model of having a job and also doing something is going to be more the norm. I actually think that's the perfect mix. Again, it's an and conversation, not an or conversation. I think that that's the best mix for everybody. Have yours, and I think that people are going to be more accommodating of that as people start to get more skilled in whatever it is that they do. As platforms like LinkedIn are readily available where you can demonstrate that you're good at what you do, I think people are going to flip the switch and companies are going to be in demand for independent contributors even more so than just like a lot of full-time stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting actually because we're obviously all full time here.
Yeah.
But most of my team have got freelance stuff outside. So Megan's a copywriter, but she's also an emotional like intelligence specialist, which serves me really well because if you're a copywriter, like what better way to copywrite than to understand the psychology of communication?
100%.
Like it's perfect. So I completely agree with you. And I think companies that don't see that as an advantage are ultimately the ones that are going to get left behind. And it's not about a like freelance full-time argument. It's just looking at things from a more holistic lens and not being so binary with like, well, if you work for us you can't do this, or if you're in this seat then you can't. Like we have a thing here, we're saying there's no such thing as it's not your job. So if someone's working on something and you think you can add value, help them. And if you don't, I'll be pissed off.
You're 100% right. It's supposed to be a lot more fluid, right? Like everything is you're either all in or all out, right? And I just feel like for the most part, what this whole thing has showed us is that we have to be a lot more open-minded and fluid, right? And we shouldn't be handcuffed or scared to do what we feel is right for us and comes naturally to us, right? And that's how, like, I think the days of somebody saying, this is what I want to be when I grow up are done, because you've got doctors that do TikToks, right? So you can be a doctor and do TikToks about being a doctor or about cooking, right? You can do whatever you want. And I just feel like people should be more braver to take that step and just hybrid.
Yeah, and I suppose like the downside of all of that is when you have got people like us saying like do all the things, I think there is a risk there which we're not acknowledging, which is if you try and do too many things, you'll never do anything well. And I do think there is a hack that, I don't make this about generations because it's not about that at all, but I do think there is this risk where people get told to try a bit of this and try a bit of that they forget there is reward in consistency at something. Like you're sitting here having started your own business because you were consistently employed by an amazing company and helped build that company. The same as me. I worked for someone else for 10 years before I can sit here and do this because I basically learned how to be an expert on their dime. And I think that's a massively underrated skill. Like go and learn and make mistakes on someone else's money and then go and do it for yourself.
Work is like your practical degree. Right? It's almost like you do your theory, then you do your practical. And then if you choose to actually start a business, which by the way, I don't think that that's the utopia or the end goal. Right?
No, I actually think it's way worse.
At the end of the day, like that's just people that just love pain, right?
We're all masochists.
Yeah, exactly. But for the most part, what I realized is that as well, another lesson out of all of this is that it also showed us that work isn't everything, right? You have to make sure there's the thing that gave me the confidence to know that I can add value in a business context is I did the Ikigai, right? And it asks you 4 main questions, which is what are you passionate about? What are you good at? What have you been paid to do? And then what does the world need? And in the middle of all of that, it's not like something that's completely out there. You still have to check and see what's the proof of concept when you've been paid to do something, which means that actually, if you like Arsenal Football Club like me, and you got paid. I know. Or it's good times now, but who knows how long it's going to last. But if you like Arsenal Football Club like me, and you've been paid to do social media before, doing social media for Arsenal Football Club makes sense, right? So, and also, but then when you go to the what does the world need, maybe, and I know Arsenal did some recent campaigns about Knife Crime in London. Maybe you want to be responsible and explore that challenge and help them up with that, right? Or you can do like this Arsenal Fan TV. They do journalism on YouTube about a club that they love, right? You can still do things that are aligned with what you're good at, and then you can just add a bit of passion into it as well. It doesn't have to be polarizingly different things, I think. Yeah.
It's interesting that you said that, because I actually think this whole idea that like work isn't part of your identity is actually really toxic, because work, of course work is part of your identity.
Yeah.
Like because you spend so much of your time at work, it should be part of your identity. And telling people that it's not, I think, is teaching people that like you should just do a job, which is incredibly unfulfilling. And look, I appreciate this coming from a place of privilege where I can choose to do what I want, right? There's many people in the world that don't get to choose. But if you can afford to choose, like choose something that you love, and that, okay, not all jobs are great 100% of the time, but like at least 30% of the time they're shit.
Yeah.
But for the 70% of the time that are not shit, like, don't you want to be doing something that's fulfilling you and making you feel like you have a purpose and meaning? And that absolutely should be tied to your identity, which is exactly what you just said there.
Yeah, so I went back to the Congo, right, in July. And I realized that my people, for the most part, just love to vibe, right? So they're their true selves when they're chilling and having a good time.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and to be fair, I think it's all based on where you want to be in life, right? If you're very happy and where you're at, and because at the end of the day, you can be super successful, yet everything else is falling to pieces. Like that meme with the dog and the house all over the place, right? The world knows you, and for the most part, a lot of people that are really successful, when they do podcasts, they say that I think Will Smith talked about the fact that at the height of his career, when it was like doing I Am Legend, iRobot, all these different things, that's when he's like, life was at the worst time as well. So I guess it's all about understanding what's your priority, right? Self-awareness is the most important thing, right? And your job, you spend the most amount of time, so it will make sense to do something that you're passionate about. But I watched a podcast with Shaquille O'Neal, right? I'm a big Kobe fan, right? And everybody knows about Mamba mentality. He's like, nothing was priority over basketball. Like family life, that side, was just about basketball. And everyone was like, well, Shaq should have been more like Kobe. And then Shaq had I think somebody even asked Kobe, who would Shaq be if he had your work ethic? And he was like the best basketballer of all time because he had everything. But then they asked Shaq that afterwards. So like, well, about this interview, like, what do you think about it? It was like, well, I won the championship. I was happy with that. But then I had my children. I felt like there was more to life than just basketball. And that actually I wanted to experience a lot of different things. And if I was more like Kobe, I wouldn't be Shaq, right? So he understood who he was and what he wanted to get out of life. And I think that before listening to myself with a hat or anything, you should look into like yourself and say, what do you actually want to achieve? What brings you joy? And for the most part, what I realize is that the things that bring me joy are things that are actually within reach. Happiness is not a destination, it's a present experience. You can't say, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to feel happy. You have to do things every single day that make you happy today and just do more of that. Like, that's why, despite how busy I am, I'm always at Arsenal games, because it's the only place where I have no filter, where I have no control, and it brings me and reminds me that you're still like human.
Yeah. You
have highs and you have lows, because for the most part, when you get into business, you get into character mode and you have to be like this all the time.
Yeah.
Me and a friend of mine described ourselves as ducks. That at the top you're like going really, really like elegantly, but then underneath you're paddling like crazy, right? Whereas I think like I said, I mentioned that I support Arsenal. You knew exactly what to say, because there's no hiding place.
Yeah.
Everyone knows how you're feeling when a public result happens, and in business, people will know the same thing, but you still have to play the whole it's all good, it's fine, I'm
smile
great,
and nod,
nod role. Whereas Arsenal, they know I'm pissed. If Arsenal lose, I'm pissed.
Yeah.
And we lost 3 games in a row the other week, so I was not in a good place.
There is something in that though, like you've said there, which I think it's such a simple thing to say, but it's quite profound, which is everyone goes, oh, when I just like when I just get that funding, when I just get that job, when I just get that partner, when I just fall in love, when I just have kids. And it's like, actually, we spend so much time focusing on the future that we forget to live in the present.
Yeah.
And so that just never happens because you're so hell bent on like, I need to get, because look, even if the just for you is like buying a new car or those superficial things, which is all fun and games, but the feeling of that only lasts about 7 days. And then you're on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So like you have to kind of find joy, as you said, in the present. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah. And what I found out, so I think that really changed my life, was I did a thing called NLP. So neuro-linguistic programming.
Yep.
And one, I've always done, because I've always been big on like self-help and self-development, so I'm obsessed about that. I'm like a nerd when it comes to like learning.
I'll give you one of the books we've got here. You'll love it.
100%.
My house is just full of books.
Unfortunately, I only do audio.
Okay, fine. I'll send you the audio.
Yeah. So if you've got audio, if you've got a documentary, I'll watch the shit out of it. And if you've got anything that I can listen to, that's one thing that I learned from NLP, is that it tells you your different learning types. Like that allowed me to learn about myself, but it actually did a really profound thing. For the first time, it allowed me to learn about other people and what defaults they go into. Because I think we all think that we're the main character of life, right? Because we live in our own heads. So we're like, everyone's watching me, everything revolves around me, etc., etc. But you fail to take the time to actually think about other people's filters and other people's driving forces. And one of the things that I learned from NLP is that anything that you're going towards, there's something that you're going away from, right? And I had the achiever gene, and I was going towards, I think it's like number 3 in one of those diagrams. And what that means is that I seeked to be worthy through achievement. So I would do audacious things and try to achieve audacious things, because when I was 7, I was trying to learn English, right? Because we moved to South Africa for a little bit. I was learning how to speak English, and I learned how to speak, but I couldn't write, right? So I was that's why I think that I have like learning disabilities, because I learned when I was far too old. And that's the first time that my dad was ever disappointed in me, right? Because I got the test back, maths all doing well, English writing was terrible. And then I was like, I never want to see that again. So I'm going to overachieve. So 100%, overachieving. And I realized that my parents were like 1000% proud of everything that I've done. I was still in that mode of, no, I need to achieve to showcase that I'm worthy of something. So for the most part, if you know that you're driving towards something, you should also think about what you're driving away from, unpack that, and then choose to drive that way because you're in control, not because the child or the person inside you is driving you towards that direction.
It's like stop using fear as a driver and start using like positive things as a driver.
Or just be mindful that you're using it. Because sometimes some people, it's an advantage if you can tap into it to give yourself a kick on the backside. I think Michael Jordan used to use the littlest thing. If somebody
chip on his shoulder.
Yes. If somebody said
I'm like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Let's see.
Yeah, you need it, because at the end of the day, but if you're mindful of it and if you're in control of it, then it's great. If you're not, then it just
toxic.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Going
back to like jobs, I'd love to talk about Gymshark.
Yeah.
We won't touch on that for too long because I know you're not at Gymshark anymore. But you were employee number what?
Well, I think office staff in Redditch, I was like 24. Between 24 and 32.
And now you're like 1,000.
No, I keep 24 because Kobe. So I remember that. But for the most part, office staff. We have other staff as well, but office staff is 24.
So you joined Gymshark as what?
So I was social media executive.
Okay.
Well, I think I had a generic title like digital media executive or something. I got
and you were there for like seven years?
Yeah, 7 years, yeah.
So talk me through, I think it would be useful because a lot of people know who you are. They follow you on LinkedIn. Shout out 100K.
I still find, you did 100K time ago. So 100K is okay. It's okay.
What do you mean?
It's okay.
Imagine if you were standing, it was Arsenal Emirates Stadium.
60,000
That's 60,000 people. That's more than people, like, you're nuts.
The issue is, because at Gymshark, the numbers were crazy.
Yeah,
right?
you're like jaded by it.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm really really almost like proud of all the accomplishments and achievements, but because now accomplishment and achievements have been reframed as like just fun games as opposed to like achievement.
Yeah.
I'm almost like, okay, cool, next checkpoint. Let's do it.
Yeah. Next goalpost.
But yeah.
So you started Gymshark. You're a part. I mean, your team basically have built that community, and the community has built Gymshark. So, I mean, I don't want to give you a big head, but huge fucking part of the growth of that business and the success of that business, like massive. So, how, like, talk us through your journey at Gymshark, but also like what lessons you learned along the way that other businesses could potentially apply. Because I think we look at Gymshark and it's like, you can say social so easily, but it's not social. It's a community. Like the community of that brand is insane and one of the most loyal. So yeah.
To be honest, when I joined Gymshark in 2015, there was already 1 million followers there, right? So they already had. I was one of the fans in the comment section posting #Gymshark before I joined the business. So it was already there. What I was there to do is understand what the company had, stay true to that, and then scale, right? So it was more getting to the essence and the core of why people like this brand or love this brand, and making sure that you never steer far away from the community. And just by doing that and making sure that we don't sidetrack and look at who's bigger and try to be them, that's what a lot of businesses try to do. They look at the larger competitors and say, how can we be more like them? But actually, for the most part, your biggest threat is the company that's coming underneath you. So we always used to say, think like 19-year-old Ben, right?
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, cool. This new generation is coming. What are the gaps that's not being provided by the companies today? And how do we be better at hitting those marks than the larger competitors? So when I went to Gymshark, it went well at the start, but it took me some time to find my rhythm, because initially, in theory, right, because it's the first time I get to actually work in social, I've been doing the theory side of it and teaching people why it's so great. But then you go into Gymshark and literally it's like, all right, cool, go on then, right? That's pretty much what it is. And
lights on.
The lights on, and you're like, okay, cool. Theoretically, this makes sense, but people are saying that this content's shit. And then I realized that it's all about, a lot of big brands put perfection on a pedestal. And one thing that I learned was it's all about impact over effort, or impact versus time, right? Marketeers, going back to the whole analogy about think different, is that now every brand has a violin with a voiceover and a beautiful scenic view, trying to be like Apple, and they think that that's marketing because that's what think different said. But actually, if everybody's doing that, I always say when everyone's zigging, you should zag, right? So, okay, cool. If everybody's investing in polished content, we're going to go scrappy. We're going to feel like when you see a post from the brand, you're seeing it from a friend that's into fitness, right? And every page is going to have a different personality of somebody that's into fitness. You'll have the gym girl that's into fitness. You'll have the anti-gym gymmer that's in Twitter, right? That's like talking about the fact that they go to the gym, but they skip leg day and they don't really like it, right? So we just humanized the brand. We're super scrappy. And we literally were led by the comment section. Like, people forget that the true power of social is not necessarily just the microphone to yell. It's actually an opportunity to listen. Back in the day, people will put up a billboard. Someone will tell you that 1 million people walked past that billboard, and you'll sign off millions of dollars based on that. But you don't know whether they were driving, they were speaking to a friend, or they just walked right past it, right? Whereas now, you can put something out there and people can tell you whether they agree with it or not, how to improve it or not. And some people turn off comments. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, right? No, that's nuts.
It's an opportunity to learn. And literally, you can be in a boardroom, put up like the 10 best themes from what your comment section said, and you can make tangible decisions from the back of that. Your customers are telling you what they want and how.
Not just marketing decisions either, like actual business product decisions. Yeah.
Do you know how big a you spoke, we listened campaign is? Just demonstrating to people. That's what the UFC do so well. They literally comment section. Who do you want to see fight next? This person or that person. All right, cool. Surprise, surprise. Next week, box up. Like it's like being able to just be a brand that people trust, that are actually engaging and listening to the audience. That's how you build a community. But taking a step back, I also understood that no one owns any community. There are different communities that exist, and every now and again there's a new authority within that community that people put up as the authority because they're deemed to be the person that they trust to understand and be the voice on behalf of the community, right? So your community, whilst you have them, you're only renting them until somebody else can fill that void a lot better. So that's why it's important to read the comments, because generations change over time, your consumer changes over time, and if your consumer is saying one thing and you're stuck in the old way, that's when you lose them to the next brand later down the line. So
it's like BlackBerry.
Exactly.
Great example.
It's like it's not new people that came about. It's people that used to buy that and I said, okay, cool, you don't resonate with us anymore, we're gonna go to Apple now, right? And that's the same thing that happens with people that used to use Instagram and now they go to TikTok, right?
Yeah.
It's no one owns a community. You may claim that you do, and a lot of businesses say we want to build our own community. No, you have to understand which community you want to be a part of, and then study that community, be the authoritarian for that community, and if you're good enough, they'll hail you as the person that's the leading face or the leading voice in it.
I always use the analogy of parties when it comes to like, because I'm always like, whenever exactly the same, like clients like, oh, I want to build a community. I'm like, that's great. We can build an audience, but it's not about building a community around you. That's called a dictatorship. It's about going and finding the best party with the people that you want to hang out with and announcing yourself to that party and then making friends with everyone in that room. And then they'll like you and want to hang out with you and come to your party. Like that's what it's all about.
The
It's
person
like a
that
giant
makes the most
networking
friends of the party is the one that's the community face.
And a big part of that is, you know, you mentioned comments there. I spend a stupid amount of time going back to comments, and I know you must as well. And like DMs as well. Like you can't just post content and build a brand, whether you're building a personal brand or building a company brand. It has to be like an engagement thing. It has to be like treating it like a party, like a networking event, going back to people being funny. Like, and that's a reason why companies like Aldi and Lidl even these days, and certainly Ryanair, have got so big. It's not because what they're posting is funny, it's because they're listening and mirroring what the people are that they're trying to influence are posting and finding funny.
100%. Like, and the thing is, the fucker that comes with being in marketing is we've oversimplified it as well. Because it's not just reading all the comments and taking all the opinions on board. It's saying, okay, cool, we have all this information. Now, who are we? And because you can't be everything to everybody, right? The buzzword right now is we want to be everything for everybody. It's like, no, you still have a mindset or somebody that you're trying to resonate with, because at the end of the day, the friend that's a different person to different social groups is not cool, right? You have to have your own personality. Now, it helps if your personality is aligned with what's hot today, right? But for the most part, what you say no to actually generates more respect than what you say yes to. So you used to say, okay, cool, here's who we are, here's our stance in society, here's the role that we play, and the comments that are about this, we need to pay close attention to. But comments that are about something completely different that will take us left field, that's not for us because it doesn't align with where we are from a value standpoint. Anything that has to do with like technology use, platforms, that's like, you should change all of that. But who you are at your core, if you keep changing your core, you're just deemed as a people pleaser and you have no leg to stand on, right? So you literally have to personify it as a person and say, okay, cool, if I was a brand, who would I be in society? Like, for example, some of the things that Ryanair and Lidl and Aldi get away with, like Marks and Spencer's can't get away with it, right? Because that's not who you are in society, right? You have to understand what role you play and then play the infinite game being that character and making sure that you're doing that in the year that we live in. That's the most important thing. If you're still doing it on TV, you're left behind, right? You have to say, okay, cool, how do I be John Lewis in this new medium? How do I be let's say, for example, with a company like Apple, although I love Apple as a business, they've never tweeted. I think they tweet once when they have a release and they delete it because they're so scared to do anything, right? But ultimately, that's just a waiting game for an up-and-coming tech brand.
Yeah, right.
To say, because right now in tech, everyone's building to sell, right?
Apple used to be against the status quo, and now it is the status quo. So that leaves a huge market for...
It became IBM.
Yeah.
Right? So that it became who it was against.
Yeah.
Now we're just waiting. Well, I'm just waiting. I'm just like waiting for who the new Steve Jobs is going to be in the tech space. And if that person is driven by the infinite game, that's a lot of trouble. It's a lot of trouble. Yeah.
It's interesting. Going back to what you were saying about your values and stuff, I always say that to clients because they quite often people don't know who their audience is. Yeah. And so, I understand, like, for us, that's an obvious thing because of, strategies built around that. But for people that don't understand who their audience is and therefore what their kind of core should be, I always say understanding what your goals are first is the most important thing, because that's gonna pinpoint you everywhere that you need to go. So if your goals are these particular things, then in order for those particular things to happen, who do you need to be who needs to be attracted to you? And based on who you need to attract is then when you figure out what your content pillar should be, or like what your brand should stand for. Because I think there's a big risk factor, particularly with personal branding, that people want to comment on everything. And like, for me, if it doesn't align to what I want to be known for, which is personal branding, leadership and scaling a business, I don't comment on it.
Yeah.
And I think that's always a risk. Like, you see, I think it might have even been Aldi recently that got in trouble for tweeting something. And it's like, why were you commenting on that? And they got in trouble for that particular tweet. Or maybe it was Ryanair. I can't remember.
Not all traffic is your traffic. That's what I always used to say.
But also you don't have to jump on every trend.
Yeah, because it just seems, because like I said, the big like game that people didn't realize about the social game is you can copy all you want, but you still have to be authentic, right? You still have to. I always say that if you wanna be a cause-led business, document your actions. Don't be known for your statements. If you have to make a statement, then you have not demonstrated over time that you truly care about a particular topic. And what you can do, because the world is very broad, there's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of issues. Some things or some challenges can be dealt with privately. The ones that you deal with publicly should be those that you want to be known for. You don't want to be the person that's like ambulance chasing. That's like, whenever there's a new thing, you're now posting and talking about it. Because the reason why you're posting is because you want you want some perception residue from doing that, right?
I love that phrase, perception residue.
I just made it up on the spot.
Well done.
It probably doesn't mean anything, but you want other people to see you doing that. It helps. There's always like, and if I was a CMO in any business, it was like, okay, cool. What's the right thing to do that's not aligned with our brand that we will do because it's just the right thing to do? We don't need any credit. We'll just do it. And then if it comes out later down the line because we helped somebody and then they said something, that's great, but that's not our spotlight. But if it's aligned with what we want to be known for and we're intentionally going to do that, then document your actions in that space. And then when it happens, your community will say, well, they've always done it. If you have to defend yourself in the comment sections, you've already lost.
Yeah.
That's just how I see it.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. Yeah. So what are, like, say 3 to 5 tips that you would give anyone who's listening to this who is looking to build a social or community strategy or even a marketing strategy in 2023? And what lessons can they learn from?
So I always say that a good social person, it's much deeper than just creativity and content, right? So that helps. So I like to, so LinkedIn is my creative process, right? I try to come up or find an idea a day. I have way more, but I'm like, okay, cool. If you almost like train to come up with ideas on a regular basis, you make it a habit, you can work on it. You don't have to be, I'm not creative. I'm actually more strategic. I just work on being creative. So creativity helps. That's a good place to be. Psychology and understanding people is super important. Arguably, it's the most important thing in social. I think that social is behavioral psychology at scale. I actually did psychology at A levels, and I did it because You're starting to understand positive reinforcements, negative reinforcements. We're basically saying when we do X, this person's going to do Y, and then it's going to lead to this. That's like behavioral psychology. You're like, by tapping on and doing this reinforcement, it's going to create this chain of events that you need to understand, study people, study how people think, what motivates them, what drives them, etc., etc. Sociology and understanding social dynamics is super important. Understanding who you are in society or who your consumer needs you to be in society, because there's a gap, is super important. So creative, people, sociology, and then you have to understand platform mechanics, and that changes all the time, right? If you get stuck, and the thing is, sometimes a platform will be dethroned not because it's become worse, it's just because the new generation wants something of their own.
Yeah.
Right? So
we've seen that with Facebook.
You cannot be romantic with any platform or any thing that drives you revenue today. You should be doing that at the time that it's hot, but constantly be looking at the horizon for what's coming next. I obsess over the Apple App Store. Anything that's on the free app that jumps positions, I'm in there and I'm trying it. Like when we were at TikTok, I think, funny story, we started the Gymshark TikTok account in 2017 when TikTok was Musical.ly.
Yeah.
And they had a remote working space in London. Literally, I found out, I was speaking to this guy, his name is Julian, I think he's on LinkedIn now. He was telling me, so I found out about Musical.ly because Gary Vee kept yelling on about it. And then I was like, let me check this out. And then I did some research and they said they've got like 70 million 13 to 18-year-olds on the platform. And I was like, oh my God. I went there, I spoke to the team, they had like all the creators on like WhatsApp groups. I'm like, oh my God, the shift is coming, right? This is going to happen because you don't have to be a genius to predict. Whatever that 13 to 18-year-old audience like today, they're going to be the adults of tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the audience group that defines what's cool is 18 to 25 because everybody younger wants to be that older and everyone older wants to be younger, right? So it's not an age thing, it's a mindset thing. And whatever that generation or the mindset that generation is.
Tastemakers.
Exactly. That sets what's cool for that era. So I always obsess with, okay, cool, 16 to 18, what are they enjoying? What are they liking? Because that's what's going to be the next big thing. So as soon as I saw that shift, I was like, we need to go in. And actually, we were still going back and forth on whether we should waste any resource. By the way, it's free to do, right? But we're still going back and forth because Instagram was doing so well. So we're like, okay, cool, let's get some interns, let's have a stab at it. Whilst no one's on there, if we fail, we fail. And then, lo and behold, Gymshark has like 13 billion hashtags, the most followed like apparel brand on the platform, and youth culture's fitness brand for the next generation. You have to constantly be on that hamster wheel because your current status needs to be earned every day. You can't rest on your laurels and say, we've done our job. That's why whenever I'm analyzing a marketeer that I want to work with, I always, in my mindset, I ask the question, are their best years ahead of them or behind them? And that has nothing to do with age. It depends on, are you future orientated with your marketing and you're looking forward and you're learning and you're obsessed with knowing how the world works and the current state? Or are you still talking about what you did in 2010 or 2012? If I, in 5 years' time, as grateful as I am with all that was done at Gymshark, I'm still known as the guy that was at Gymshark, then I've done a categorical failure, right? I think Kobe, I'm very big on Kobe. His goal was to make the next 20 years more memorable than the last 20 years. And I've always been that type of person. So if I go into a new chapter, it aims to one up and one up and one up. And I always ask that question, like, what are you obsessed about today? Which brands do you like today? Are you using Apple as a reference for what you're still doing today? That's how I know. No, they're more reflective. They like the good old days. You can even ask me, I'm like, what music do you listen to right now? If all your reference points are all behind. I'm like, you might find it hard to work with me.
Yeah.
Because I'm listening to Lil Baby. I have no Central C. I was young Central C in the office. I was like, you need to know the current state of culture if you want to have the audacity to be an authority in the current state of culture. But what do I know?
I mean, I think you know quite a lot. We have a client and a great friend, and she runs a PR agency, which creates these incredible activations for these amazing, like incredible. And she always says, like, my team, it's their job to be in the culture. Yeah. So unless they're out on the weekend partying and stuff, I'm like, why the fuck are you coming into work? Like, you need to be seeing what is going on in the streets to know, like, for what we need to sell to them. Like,
you can't chat GPT that.
Right? No, that's an experience. You have to experience that. And that, going back to what you said right at the beginning of this podcast, that's not something that you can just Google. That's not that is an EQ thing. That is, I want to be with people and understand what people want and how people operate and all that type of thing.
People that are well traveled are gonna be like very, very important in the future, or just open minded to different cultures.
Yeah, curious.
Curiosity is going to be one of the most important metrics to determine whether someone's built for like the future way of working. Like, you don't have to be, but in marketing, if you want to get past this chat GPT, because you have to level up, like you can't complain that the world is moving forward. Like, the world doesn't owe us anything. Like,
no.
Like,
yeah, no one's coming to save you.
Yeah. Like, if Instagram goes down, like we did a lot on Instagram. If Instagram goes down and your company that you built was highly impacted by that, then you deserve to lose. Unfortunately, you have. That's just the game's the game, because we had an opportunity because companies before us. I think we went to the Facebook office in San Francisco on One Hackaway. Amazing name, by the way. And at the front of the sign, there's the Facebook thumbs up. On the back of it, they still have the company that used to be at that building before. And they do that because they're like, we can be that company as well.
Yeah.
We're all just in a vicious cycle. You come in, it's your time, it's great. If you don't evolve and keep playing the game, you die. And then the next person will come in like you never existed, right? So no one, that's why I say with community, you don't own the community. You don't own your space. That's why I love artists like Drake, right? And LeBron James and like Rafael Nadal. People that were like literally 20 years ago, still good, until today, they're still at the top of the cup. It's really difficult to stay, like Jay-Z does that. Like, you can still drop an album called, that's really difficult to do. And you can only do that if you have utmost confidence in who you are and not wavering and selling yourself short with, I always say with Drake, for example, he's only been doing it for like 15 years, but a Drake album is a Drake album. A Drake feature, he'll dabble in what's new right now. So he'll rent the modern day era and it will collaborate with the artist that's hot right now so that he can take the audience and bring him
relevant.
Back. Yeah, exactly. But it maintains authenticity.
Because Justin Bieber did that. That's why Justin Bieber's audience have stayed with him.
Yeah, he did the Essence collab, but a Bieber album is a Bieber album. And artists that make their name off the back of a trend, they never stay either, because you just become the trend person. You have to have an identity and then be able to pivot and try. You have to put in the work, and it's very difficult to be an athlete or a business person or anybody that transcends cultures. You have to have so much like self-awareness, but also open-mindedness to say. I think Bernard Arnault, I think I got the name right. Louis Vuitton. Apparently, he's the one that found Virgil Abloh. You know how big that company is? He's the richest person in the world.
LVMH.
And he's the one that found Virgil Abloh because he knows the importance of understanding what's culturally relevant right now. And that transformed the business. Now I've got Pharrell Williams. And now if you look at other fashion houses, they're starting to embody that as well. Elon Musk, say what you want about them. It's like there's different approaches, but some things stay the same. Is that you never feel like you're too big to do the groundwork. If you ever get to a stage when you're like, that's beneath me, or the most important ingredient, then that's done. But you deserve to have your house topple over.
I wanted to keep going with Gymshark, but I really, really think this is a nice segue into personal branding.
Yeah.
You spoke about Elon Musk,
Yeah.
Virgil Abloh, and your 100,000 followers on LinkedIn. So Gymshark had I think I'm fair to say, such a strong culture of personal branding. Like Ben obviously has a massive personal brand. I feel like a big part of why Gymshark has got to where it's got to is because people are really invested in him from the jump. And then even from your like interns all the way up to head of and Noel Mack, massive personal brand.
Yeah.
So talk us through the thought process, or talk me through the thought process as to why that culture was so important, and how would you get started with implementing it for yourself, but also for your team?
Well, for the most part, I think we're getting into an era when I remember back in the day when you want to buy like toothpaste or some shit, and they'll put like this person in a lab coat and tell you the expert has said this is the best toothpaste. And that was enough for us to say, you know what, because whoever had the best expertise, they won. But then we went from the credibility era, then it went into the aspirational era, right? When it was like beautiful, top leader, like Apple, all that stuff. But now we're in the relatability era. It's not just about what you sell, it's about who it's coming from, right? People need to feel like they know who they're buying from. And that's the only reason why personal branding works, is because it allows people to understand, especially now that we're going into Gen Z, who are more cautious about where they're spending their money. You might have the better product, but do they buy into your vision, your dream, your personality, who you are? You don't want to feel like they know, because going back to the whole conversation about ChatGPT and new technology, people, I think somebody said something like, Gen Z are more likely to challenge a person in authority than give a waiter bad feedback, right? So interpersonal skills and the ability to like express yourselves to peers and people in society, people are going from being able to have 10 friends to having like no friends. Yet they have like 1 million friends online, but then they don't have the connection in person, right? So now clothing is used to articulate who you are. So people are buying from brands that tells a story about who they are, right? So ultimately,
part of their identity.
Part of their identity. So if you're wearing Gymshark, we used to call it the Gymshark nod. You know each other. There's commonality there. But then that's because you all know the story, you know the people behind the brand, you know the personality. And also, in an era when people value transparency, being able to demonstrate what's actually happening, who you're buying from, what are our goals, what are our strengths, what are our flaws, people buy into authenticity, true authenticity, right? And it's very, very difficult for a business to empower their teams to be that. But then that's why I say that it starts with the hiring process from the jump. When I used to hire for teams, or now when I still do, I'd get a hiring manager to do all the like skill-based stuff. I'll just be watching the personality-based stuff, the body language-based stuff. What's the motivation behind the person? Why do they do what they do? What's the toughest experience that they faced? Because for the most part, it was very difficult to get into my team. But once you got into the team, you got all the liberation. That's because you're going to have liberation to be able to be a representative for the team. So we encourage people to be recognized as the authority within their space, because one, not only is it great for them, right? But two, it looks good on the company because they're like, well, you got these people working for you. And three, because you do it in a selfless way, people will not forget that. If you're deemed as a leader that restricts people from trying to grow and trying to be better and trying to do something for themselves, then that person will remember that, right? So for the most part, I think that the most important thing about personal branding today is the authenticity, it's transparency, it's understanding who you're buying from. Now, how you do that, right, and how you actually create your own personal brand or take the first step, you go right back to that ikigai, right? Because there's a lot of people, because let's say, for example, the thing about social and marketing, it's very easy to just see, okay, who is the most followed person? Let me just do what they do. But there will come a time when that will be exposed, and then people will see that that's not you. And the long journey that it took to build that up, it'll come down overnight. So it's important to make sure that you go back into who you are, what you have to offer, and where that aligns with what the world needs, and become the space, the person that does
Fill that void.
It'll be so, like, literally, I'm doing like 4 different stuff, but I'm still being myself, just applying it into 4 different contexts. That's so much easier to balance. If you try to be a different person in different things, the reason why I can do well on LinkedIn is because exactly what I put on LinkedIn is what I talk about in real life.
Yeah.
And it's what I obsess over. I know my niche. And the issue is that people think the niche is thinking small. I always used to tell people that if only 1% of the global audience is your potential clients, that's 80 million people. And until you have 80 million clients, then think about going broad, right? Who are the 80 million people that you want to resonate with, and just focus on that. And then eventually the residue will go further.
The perception residue.
Yeah, because they will, like, I was speaking to a marketeer because I was like, and her background was in music. And I was like, okay, cool. If I was a hot new artist right now, what would you advise me to do from a strategic standpoint? They said, the first thing you need to do is be big in your own backyard, because then it's not you against the world.
Central C, great example.
It's your city against the world, right? And that, then you make your city home ground, right? Drake, Canada and Toronto. I went to Toronto. You can go anywhere without listening to Drake. And he started off going big internationally, and then he went back to Toronto. Why would you do that? Because if you go with your city, if you go with your home ground, if you go with your niche, it's multiple voices pulling people in. If you're shoving, then people will be like, who's going to authenticate the fact that you're actually legit? You have to be big in your own home ground first. And then that takes you wherever you need to go.
I love that advice. And it's so true. Like I started super niche with my personal brand. It was only about personal branding, only for people that were interested in personal branding. And now I've scaled that out to like entrepreneurs and marketing teams and stuff, because they still need to be interested in personal branding, but it's more aligned to where I am in my journey.
Once they trust you with one thing, they'll trust you with other things.
Yeah.
If you pick the thing that you can 100% be credible in and be trustworthy in, people will say, what else have you got to offer, right? I think until now, I think this is probably one of the first podcasts that I've done properly. Like, no one's seen a video podcast of me out yet. I've done podcasts that are about, but I've never actually done a video podcast, but people feel like they know me.
Yeah.
It's because I gave people the side of me that they needed to know at the time.
Yeah.
And then as it gets more and more, you start to learn a little bit more and you broaden out. If I started broad, I'll be all over the place.
Yeah. The worst thing that I see people do with their personal brand is try and be someone they're not. And because I think that the worst thing that someone could say to me when they met me being like, oh, I imagine you to be different. Oh, that would just like stab me in the heart, because that's that misuses the entire point of personal branding. Anyone could build a brand. You can invent that, but you can't invent a personality. You just have to learn how to articulate and distribute it.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're saying. But there is something in there about like, I'm not 100% authentic online, because if I was, I'd probably get in a lot of trouble.
Well, it's not that. It's just the side of me that people need at that period of time, right?
Yeah.
Because on Twitter, I'm Arsenal Elfried. That's not going to be helpful to anybody.
Yeah.
Like on like.
But that's what I mean. Like what I talk about ranting, like after a few champagnes with my friend, like tequila with my friend, is not helpful to what I'm trying to achieve, right?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, going back to the whole conversation about people using platforms which demonstrate or reflect on something good they've done. Once you put something out on a platform, if it's something of private benefit to you, just have a conversation with somebody. Once you're putting it online, if the intention is that this is good for me, that sucks. That's the worst thing to do. If I'm putting something out there, I'm like, is this going to help somebody? Just one person. Is this going to help somebody, or is this just going to help me? If it's going to help me, I'm just going to. I don't need to validate
it. Yeah.
But if I know that it's going to help one person, then I know that it can help. That person's going to share with one other person. But now that I'm fortunate to be at a position where it goes to a lot of people that have trusted that I'll be authentic to myself. What they've seen from me, actually, for the most part, is like what I find funny in the creative space. Right?
You're one of my favorite people to follow because there's always some nonsense.
Yeah, I
love it.
It's literally just like you've literally known like 1/10 of me, which is like what I find funny and what
gold
I find,
on social.
Gold on social, funny on social, spark inspiration. Right? There's other elements that are there, but the other people that are filling that void, you don't need that from me. In private or in a podcast, when you ask me about it, then I'll give it to you. But I just don't wanna. I know where I'm good and where I'm informed, but I also know where I'm not. And I just believe that in the space where I can add the most value on a LinkedIn platform, for example, is by demonstrating what sparks my enthusiasm and creativity, what makes me laugh, what I find hilarious because people just find it great, and then like little quotes that have helped me become better at what I do. I just like to share that with everybody. I overshare, right? I give away my creative inspiration and secrets. I just give it away because I'm that self-assured in myself that once I've put it out there, I have to go on to the next thing. I always have to be a step behind. If you have one golden secret weapon that if somebody else gets it, you're out of business, then you deserve to be out of business. You should be able to say, by the way, here's my recipe. I'm going to show it to you because I believe that you won't be able to do it better than me. And by the way, I'm on to the next thing.
100%. That is the greatest hack for anyone trying to build any kind of brand, is give 100% of your knowledge away for free. I always say that. I'm like, people are like, well, no, people normally pay me for this. I'm like, fucking give it away, because 99% of people will read it and go, oh my God, that was so valuable. But the same 99% of people will go, I can't do this, so can you do it for me?
Yeah. It's weird. Going back to the whole thing about personal branding, it's weird that when you start giving things away for free, how much people want to pay you to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because they're like, okay, cool. Because
now you're an authority.
Yeah, and people don't have that much time, right? Like there's a lot of things that I could do. I bought a house last year, right? And thank you. And then I moved to London.
And it's all down here from here, kids.
Yeah. I bought a house in Gymshark campus as well. So it's just there, like in the middle of the office. I was like,
Sell it back to Ben.
but there's a lot of things that people were telling me, you're mad for outsourcing that. I was like, I can do it. I can go on YouTube. I just don't have time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to
Why would you want to? Get an expert who can do it for you.
I don't want to do everything. So I used to be like control freak, but now I'm like, delegate. Get something that's better. I always say when you're building teams, find people that think different to you and find people that are better than you in what they do. Just delegate. And what I found was, especially within creative space, it's just like, I realized this, I don't know whether you realized this, it seems that regardless of what profession that you're in, the only profession or space that unites everybody and everyone can seek an appreciation in is marketing. You can be a financier and put finance stuff out there and people will be like, only finance people will like it. You can put like tech banter out there and only tech people will like it. For some reason, marketing is like when I was in the school playground and everyone wanted to be a footballer and then we all miraculously got knee injuries, right? And couldn't be. Marketing is that thing where everybody thought they had ideas and then somebody told them, no, you don't. So I have to do this thing. That's why you have so many like doctors becoming TikTokers, because finally they can be a creator.
But that's because marketing is psychology.
Yeah, exactly. And people...
And everyone understands to a degree.
Exactly. So if you understand marketing, it's really, really valuable. But now, the cool thing is that now, especially after COVID and everything, more CEOs, more managers understand the power of true and good marketing. So if you're a marketing professional, I always say any intern or anyone that's like a graduate that comes to me and asks me like any advice, I'm like, literally, go on LinkedIn, post your thoughts and ideas on stuff, and then people, like, here's the tactic. Go on LinkedIn, follow everybody in the companies that you like and admire, right? With titles that are aligned with where you want to go in your career. Because that's what I did. I went and just spent the first kind of like few months on LinkedIn was following everybody. I saw this guy when I was at uni called Musa Tariq. I don't know whether you know who Musa is. And he was the first person that I saw with a social media title. I think he worked at Burberry first, then Nike, then Apple, and then I think he went to Ford and like Airbnb. And like, I was like, this guy's fucking God, right? So I was like, I followed him, I followed everybody. Now, LinkedIn was a little bit more like easier to get to the person that you want to at the start. But for the most part, because the algorithm allows you to reach people that don't follow you, you have no fucking excuse, right? Go out there and just, if you're really good, post that stuff consistently. And the thing about LinkedIn,
but if you're not really good, document the journey of you trying to become good.
And then
That's a lot of people don't do that. They go, I'm not an expert yet. I'm like, but people still want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Become a research expert.
Because it's all about the process, right? People...
Look at Gary Vee. That's why he's so famous now. It's because he documented when he wasn't Gary Vee.
And the thing is, people are not buying you because you're they're not hiring you because you're the finished product.
But it's been basically buying.
Weird.
Everything is sales.
They're not hiring you because you're the finished product. They're hiring you because you're consistent. You have a personality. You're resourceful. You're not crippled by failure. You're doing research. Documenting that whole journey is part of the interview. Like, I don't have to interview anybody about, like, I can just go on their LinkedIn, go on their Instagram, see what on the company that they've worked for. Especially if you work on social, you tell me the brand you worked on.
I'll be able to figure out how good you are. Yeah.
And if you tell me, oh, I couldn't have done that because the company didn't allow me to do that, I'm like, you're not strong enough to actually convince people, because
which is marketing,
right? So that tells me all I need to know.
Yeah.
If you worked for a brand in social, I should be able to see you take the reins and influence other people to do the right thing. If you couldn't do that and you're waiting for somebody else to give you the authority to do the right thing, that's already something that I spot right away. So that's why if a brand's not allowing you to do that for them, do it for yourself. Exactly the same thing. I have to look at me as, okay, cool, I'm Alfred Samba the person, but because I worked in branding, I'm like, okay, cool, what do people need from me? What do they actually want from me? Because do they want me to pour my heart and soul about like how much I love music? Maybe not. Maybe I can do a podcast in the future and just talk about music. But at this time and in this moment, people need creative inspiration. They need humor because everybody takes themselves so fucking seriously on LinkedIn. And people just need to chill out, right? So I'll be that person.
Be the joy. And
then when everybody does the thing different on me and tries to do that, that's when I'll pivot and do something else. Yeah. It's probably why I'm doing podcasts now.
Yeah, it's like I need to change the game because everyone's just copying my methodology. Before we like wrap into the last bit, you said something really interesting, which is like you hire for, a couple of minutes ago, you hire for not necessarily their skills, because you can see that it's all about like the attitude. No. One of the best things I ever did was change our interview process from interviewing them to the final stage, getting candidates to interview me as like their next employer. It tells you so much about a person, because the people that you don't want to hire are like, what's the company culture like? But the ones that you do want to hire are like, so what are your plans for this year? Where do you think revenue is going to come from? What are your growth plans? What does year 5 look like? Like, and not necessarily just about the money piece, but like they're actually interested in what the company's doing, but more importantly, where they will be in where the company's doing. And that's been a game changer for me of like filtering out, like you said, set a really high bar for entry.
Like, I'm obsessed with like candidates that don't give a shit about me or don't give a shit about the company.
Yeah.
Even more exciting. It's almost like
they're the risk takers.
Yeah, when you've got people that are like, yeah, like been following you for ages, blah, blah, blah. I think it's cool, but the issue with that is, and one thing I used to do in interviews is I'll ask people like, who are the brands that you feel like are doing it great right now? If you listed us as the brand, you're already off the list.
Yeah.
Because I know
we
your
need to
limit.
Be better. Yeah.
We need people that say, you guys are shit, you guys are all right, but you need to do this, right? I want people, and so one thing that I learned, because I like I said, I don't like reading books. I like listening to audiobooks. And there's also like, there's an app. I forgot, it's free advertising. I actually forgot what it's called. But then actually you can summarize books in like 15 minutes.
Oh, I've seen that. I've seen it all over Instagram. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I've got loads of paid ads. It's coming to my thing. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
The name will come back to me. But so I was listening to, you can literally like listen to like 3 books in the middle of a workout. I was listening to one about hiring teams, high performing teams, and they said that the typical cycle of most organizations, so a leader in the business will hire an A plus player, who might be threatened and hire a B player, and the B player hire a C player, and then they'll hire a D player, and then that just trickles down and the output becomes worse and worse. What you need to do is, if you're an A player, you should hire an A player or more. You should encourage people to get people that are better than you at what they do, and then you should learn from them. Right? You should be obsessed to learn from your team. I realized there was a point where I'm like, I'm becoming a boomer, right? Like I'm literally, once I got past 25, I'm like, I'm not cool anymore, right? That's just a self-awareness. I don't deserve to be cool anymore. What is cool is if I stay and become and keep being myself, but seek to understand the perspective of who are cool today. Not try to be who they are, but seek to understand. Because I was in that sea when there was older corporate people, and I'm telling them TikTok, or I was telling them Instagram's the thing, or Facebook's the thing. And they're like, no, we prefer doing TV because that's what we've always done. And I've been able to check myself and realize that as soon as I start saying that a platform or something's weird, that's another reference point that I'm getting old. So go and find a young and upcoming talent that don't just like live within it, because there's 2 types of innovative people that I've found, right? There's people that just happen to be young at the time that the new thing comes around and they just learn quicker than everybody. And there's people that, regardless of whether it's now or 5 years or 10 years from now, they're always looking for the next big thing. And what you want to do is spot those people early to say, okay, cool. They don't just, it's like Kobe used to say, they're not just playing basketball because they're bigger than everybody else. They actually know what they're doing. They understand the psychology. People that have that weapon will be an advantage. I prefer investing in talent that will be great in the long run than just people that are like great at doing that thing today, and that's all they want to do.
There's no growth there.
If you're that's why even when people ask me what do I do, I go for it almost like a limitless title. I say I'm a creative thinker, community builder, and a storyteller. And whatever the platform is where I can do those today, that's where I'm going to be at. I don't care about social media. It just happens to be the space where I can actually use that as a
reach
canvas.
People.
So that's why when ChatGPT or something else comes along, I'm not threatened by it, because the issue with, let's say for example, if you worked in search, for example, when social came along, it was a threat to like your job. You thought it was a threat because people used to overinvest in ads on like PPC, and now people started to take the money away and go on to like paid ads on social and stuff like that. So as soon as you align who you are as a person to a particular, like I'm a chat GPT expert, once that goes, you go alongside with it. You should say, okay, cool, what is this platform allowing me to do? And that's who I am. Now, wherever the platforms that will come tomorrow, I should just be looking out for it and just like evolving. So you need to do. Have an infinite, what's it called? A limitless, infinite title. Let's have one that's not like confined by time. And then you just do that thing in the new era.
Speaking of the future.
Yes.
Wrapping up.
Yeah.
What is in the future? What are you doing now? Because a lot of people, like we said right before we started, was you don't want to be known as the guy from Gymshark, because that's in the past. So what are we doing now? And
by the way, like, I'm usually, you know, like when people have like X in their title or whatever, like I was going back and forth with that because the goal was like, okay, cool. The therapeutic thing is to cut loose, go forward. But I was like, that was a badge of honor, right?
Yeah.
So,
and you should be proud of that time.
Yeah, and it was amazing. I'm still close with the team. I love it. I still watch all the posts. I message the team when they do something great. It's so big. But now it's like, okay, cool. And it also puts more pressure, right? So you want to be, and he did Gymshark, not Gymshark.
He did
first,
Gymshark,
right?
full stop.
Yeah, exactly. So where I'm at right now is going back to that whole curiosity model. I was like, okay, cool. We're in Web 2. We're going into Web 3. And a company called Iconic wanted me to join their board as the chief community officer. And I said on one condition: the team that I build are going to be freaking awesome. And I always wanted to start my own creative house. So I can join your business if we can collaborate and have the creative house. So the team that I bring together, we're part of the same team. So to help them with all their ventures, the tech venture studio, working predominantly in Web3 and blockchain. So they need a marketing team. So we'll service them, but then we also are an open house to service and work with brands, etc. So that's launching soon. So March 14th.
2 weeks.
Yeah, it's actually called Butterfly Effect. And the reason why we're launching on March 14th is because that is National Learn About a Butterfly Day.
I love that. That's so cute.
Yeah, and the thing is, I get married 4 days after that, so people think I'm insane. So
no, you are fully insane.
Yeah.
It's not they think, they know.
Yeah, I'm doing both right now. So
for context, Alf came back from his stag do last night and is sitting on this sofa. So like, fair play to you, get it done.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be a zombie for the next 21 days, but as a marketeer at heart, it just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Right? I think that every company has, like we talked about John Lewis off camera, the fact that they want to own Christmas, but they don't necessarily do the best Christmas out. What they do is they just own that moment, and there's nostalgia within that moment. Now, Gymshark, it was New Year, New Me. Like I said, it's not about you owning
the
the
66.
period. Yeah, it's about owning a period that matters to the community. So with ours, we're like, well, in creative, there's no creative day, but with Butterfly Effect, there's a Butterfly Day. Let's own the day and then make it a thing, right? So ultimately, yeah, that's what we wanted to do. It was too perfect to let it go. So
I love that. Oh, it's so exciting. I can't wait to see what happens. The last question, which I ask everyone on this podcast, is if you could go back to 21-year-old you and tell yourself 3 things now that you've lived, your life up until this point, what would they be?
The first one would be that your parents are proud of you anyway, right? Because everything was always, because I had the golden ticket, I like to say it, that I went back to Congo, and what happened was I went back to the house that I was born in. I think I posted on LinkedIn, and to see, I always tell people that the reason why I'm so like calm and almost like assured of myself is because in the spectrum of how difficult and challenging life is, I've done, like, if this is the start and this is like as big as it can get in terms of achievement, I'm already like here because of where I started, right? So but then it's only when I went back that I realized the journey that I've been on. But for the most part, I kept wanting to thank my parents for allowing me and giving me the opportunity. Like, a lot of people in the UK say like the country shit, and I'm like, what? Have you lived somewhere else? You know how much privilege we have over here, how much opportunity. Yes, there's bad things, but for the most part,
it's great.
It's great, right? I have nothing to complain about for the most part, right? So I was like, the fact that I'm even in the UK on a blank canvas already put me so much further than other people. So I'm like, everything I used to do was to make sure that I could give or repay my parents back for that golden ticket. But although that helped me, I think emotionally, I didn't almost like connect the dots that my parents are proud of me anyway. So that would have made me so much better coming up in the early days of my career. I've been so much more confident, so much more successful a lot earlier on. So that's the first one. The second one would be don't be crippled by perfection, because you're raised to be very, very obedient when you're African. It's always about being perfect all the time. And that transcends into the work that you do, right? So ultimately, the moment that I lost that almost like connection with perfectionism, and then I started to embody that impact of an effort, almost like mentality. I think you said this about Barack Obama when he said he just has to be 51% sure. I have to be 100% sure with everything. I actually watched that, and that helped me even today, I think I watched like 3 days ago, and I was like, okay, cool, 51% sure. That's another thing that's helping me cope with that like need to have everything perfect. Like we talked about the name of butterfly effect and everything. I literally, have you ever watched Prison Break?
Yeah.
When I was thinking about my next move, I was in like my room, like
strategy.
Everything was like written up and all that kind of stuff, right? I still have it today, and that's helpful when you're doing big things, but it's not helpful when you're doing little movements. You have to do that at the start and then just do little steps every day.
Fun fact, Clout wasn't called Clout when we launched it. It's called Branding Unleashed, and I changed the name 3 weeks later because I fucking hate it.
Yeah.
But that's because I'm like, cool, that's what we're doing, let's do it. I'm like, oh, we can worry about that later.
You can change it all the time. So impact over effort, and always the person that gives the most value actually ends up being the one that becomes the most successful. Because that's why that's weird, because you think you're supposed to keep to become successful, but the more you give, and if it's good, the more people will resonate, and the more people will see you as the authority or the market leader. So give more than you ask for is super important, because the reason why I'm on this podcast or had the job at Gymshark or even had the Iconic team approach me was because I gave every day for something that had no immediate ROI. I just did it because I wanted to. Yet now there's like job offers every day, and I'm just like, well, it's not right for me, right? So
and what a place to be in.
And what a place, but then that's only because you have to take the selfless step to say, I'm just going to give more than I ask for. And if you do that over time, and if you aim to improve while you're doing it, it's because you're hitting the spot of what people need.
Give, then ask.
Then you won't even have to ask.
Yeah.
People ask you. I think I'm in a position now where somebody told me, would you ever have to sit in an interview? Like, would you ever have to interview for something? I'm like, I don't think so. Right?
That's a good place to be in.
Because you have, everything is there, right?
Yeah.
You can find out everything because I put things out there. You know my perspective. You know whether I'm in the know. And then things just come. And then it's like, and then now people want to pay me to speak at places about things that I've done in the past. And also what you realize is that your losses will be way more useful for people behind you than your successes, because it'll teach other people not to make the same mistakes. So actually losing is great because you have a lot more value to give.
Yeah.
Your wins doesn't help anybody. Your losses do.
Including yourself.
Yeah.
I would say that one of my big things is I share all my failures.
Yeah.
All of them. And people go, oh my God, I can't believe you posted that. I'm like, yeah, but like no one died.
Yeah.
Like we're all good.
And it might prevent somebody from doing it.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Correct. 100%.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I could keep talking to you for like another hour. But now we've got food to eat, steaks to munch on. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Like a year in the making this has been. So I really appreciate the time, and thank you for coming on Branded.
Thank you. Amazing. Thanks so much. It was great to be here.